When looking at the 3-act structure, it can be so frustrating understanding how to get from Act 1 to Act 2 and how to do it in a really effective and engaging way. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to end Act 1 and one of the best ways to begin Act 2 in your novel. In yesterday's video right here, I talked about how to effectively plan your chapters and the best ways, I think, to end them. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to end Act 1 and the best way to begin Act 2. So the debate is the very last plot point of Act 1. Now, if this is the first time of hearing about the debate, or if it's your first time hearing about Save the Cat Writes a Novel, I suggest you check out my video right here that goes through all of the beats in the very first act according to Save the Cat. It's very insightful, it's very helpful, and it's going to give you a really strong foundation so you can come back to this video and apply this knowledge as well. But if you already know all that stuff, let's talk about the debate. We know at the very end of Act 1, your character is going to be debating a decision. They will either be staying in their ordinary world, spoiler alert, they won't. They will be moving on to a new world. Now, physically speaking, this does not have to be a new world. It does not have to be a new setting. Everything can be within your character's mind. But as I'm aspiring to write epic fantasy, mine is definitely a totally different setting. But if you're not, it could just be a completely different state of mind. Your character has gone in this old way. Let's say they're a victim and they have stepped into this new world where they are no longer a victim. Whatever the case may be, it is a stark contrast between Act 1 and Act 2. Now, right before Act 2 begins, during the debate plot point, it is your goal to do two things. First goal is your character is actively deciding to change in some way, some shape, some form. There is a decision that has gone on internally, and you need to show this externally. So if it's setting foot outside the Shire, or if it is grabbing onto this new way of life, or if it's physically changing clothes so you have more confidence, whatever the case may be, there needs to be an action reflecting this decision. Number 2, there needs to be a solid, clear goal. This does not have to do with the theme. I talk about theme a lot. This particular goal is going to be, for some reason, your character made the decision to leave. Why? Make sure it's obvious to the reader what your character wants. Why are they leaving? What are they hoping to gain from changing? This is probably one of the biggest issues I see in aspiring authors. They just make the transition, but they don't define what does the character want. What are the stakes if the character fails? And this needs to be done not just at the beginning of the novel, but as your character has decided to make this change, make it really obvious again during the debate. Why? What is it your character wants? Now, once you've done these two things, congratulations. I believe you have an effective debate and you have an effective end to Act 1. But you can't stop there, right? You got a whole novel to do really good things with. And so the very next step into showing how amazing your ending to Act 1 is to have an even more amazing Act 2 beginning. To do this, you want to mirror the two worlds. So you have your opening image, you have your ordinary world where your character started from. And again, this doesn't have to be a physical place, this could be a mental state. But you got it right here. The moment your character goes into Act 2, they need the ice bucket challenge to fall on their head. They need to be so shocked by how different this new world is from their ordinary world. And it needs to be different in every single way. I'll give you an example. The way I'm planning my Act 2 to start is my character is traveling. She hasn't actually made it to this new world yet. However, there are still a lot of things that happen that are completely opposite from everything she just came from. Now, she does have traveling companions from this new world that makes it a little bit easier to get this comparison across. Let me give you a few examples. I have them written down, so if you see me look down, I'm just trying to make sure I stay on track. So she comes from a Euro-inspired world, and she is traveling to a tribal world. This is very different. I mean, imagine if one day you could go back in time and you could live in medieval times. Then you stepped on a crack, and instead of breaking your mama's back, you teleported to Africa and you were with a tribe. I mean, that is a stark difference. So the first way I did it is I had this old setting, it was Euro-based, and now it's this tribal world based off of the early Americas, based off of early Africa, and a few other tribal cultures from around the world. The second thing is how society functioned, what was socially acceptable in her old world. Beforehand was very court-based, it was very political, it was the Enlightenment and things of that nature, where in this new world, pretty much socially, everything that matters is surviving and how much you can be a benefit to the tribe. And another odd little twist, especially comparing to that, is she came from a world where she was always surrounded by family. She was always surrounded by people who loved her, people she was raised with, and she's now going to be very lonely. She's going to be in a world where she doesn't know anybody. And so she's going from this group-based ideology to being alone and having to rely on herself. She was very accepted in her ordinary world. Now, she was different, but for the most part, everyone knew her. They knew what to expect out of her. And they still accepted her even if she felt like she didn't belong. But in this new world she's going to, she's completely rejected and she doesn't expect that. So it's really shocking to her to go from being kind of accepted, maybe not fitting in, but accepted, to your very existence being ripped apart. Another thing is that in her hometown, she was raised with the rules and the laws. She knows what's okay. She knows what's not okay. And then she goes into this new world and she has a lot of misconceptions. She makes a lot of assumptions that are wrong. And then in some situations, she's just plain ignorant. Overcoming this is going to require a lot of character growth on her end. And it adds for some really nice tension. Have you ever been in a place where your heart was in the right place, but you were totally misunderstood? And that can be really frustrating, having good intentions, doing something that you think is a good thing, and then still getting blamed in a bad way. I mean, that's just frustrating. So she deals with a lot of stuff like that. Next, she had to kind of rely on just being a normal person. And in this new world, she has gained magical abilities and she has to learn how to use them. And just for some extra attention, she doesn't want to learn how to use them. So it's this kind of thing where she's in this whole nother world and all of these different rules, and in some ways she needs to learn the rules, and in other ways she just wants to reject them because she doesn't want that to be a part of her life. Lastly is some things that are considered like highly unacceptable in her world is something completely acceptable in this new tribal world. Let's say she comes from a place where suicide really isn't a thing. It's not something that's accepted. It's certainly not something that's encouraged, and she's going over to an area where that kind of thing is encouraged. If you're captured by the enemy, you know what to do. So in a lot of ways, just everything about this new world that she's about to experience, she is going into this thinking this is a part of her culture, this is a part of who she is, she knows this is what she wants, and this is where she thinks she belongs. And it's going to be polar opposite of everything she has actually been raised with, everything she actually knows. And it's going to make for a really exciting Act 2. Now, all of those things are not in that very first chapter right after Act 1, but a good amount of them are. She experiences the loneliness. She experiences her misconceptions. She's going to experience the magical skills. She's going to experience this different acceptance, right? So what was totally not accepted in her world is accepted in this world, and she's going to have to come face to face with it. There are some things like being rejected, some things like the actual tribal world, being solely self-reliant, things of that nature she's not going to experience yet. That is coming though in the next few chapters. But you want to make sure the very next scene after the decision to change is going to show how different this new world, this new mindset, this new something is to anything your character has witnessed before. Alright, so if you got value out of this video, hit that like button. If you're interested in more tips and techniques on how to tell your story better, please come check out my channel, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell.